Hello and welcome to Indiepocalypse Radio, your source for, stuff about Indiepocalypse, the premier alternative game anthology zine. I'm your host, the creator of Indiepocalypse, that aforementioned alternative indie. I'm trying to not say indie anymore. It's technically true, but indie is lost all meaning in terms of, especially in terms of video games. I think it's definitely lost all meaning. Maybe it holds a little bit more weight in the tabletop realm. And you know what? Believe it or not, we have an expert in. I don't know. Maybe expert is putting too much on my guess, but we have a purveyor of independently made. What a weird thing. Independently made tabletop games, who you may know from issue 28 of Indiepocalypse with Whistling Wolf Cafe. It's Laura of Lucky New Games. Laura, how are you doing today?
Doing well, and yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say expert, but definitely a fan of.
A creator of a. Now, indie tabletop, you folks are very prolific. Prolific, I would say, often. It comes with the benefit of, I say, not having to program them.
It's definitely a different set of skills required. Like, there are some skills that certainly run parallel with video games,
Yeah.
and then there are places where it certainly branches out,
Yeah,
branches away, you know?
I've made at least technically like 70 table or like role playing games or something
Oh,
ish.
wow.
And yeah, sometimes you develop a lot of systems for them, and it just keeps going, and you have to. And then sometimes it's like a page and a half, and it's very abstract.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the other reasons why independent developers are becoming more and more prolific in the TTRPG space is because more and more we're realizing that it's not as hard structured as people thought it once was. You look back into the 90s and, even the early aughts, and D&D was the game. I mean, it started branching out with White Wolf, but it was still, you had to read a freaking novel
Right,
just to be able
right.
to play a game and get a feel for it. But these days, you've got games that fit on the size of a business card.
Yeah, yeah.
People are starting to understand that a player's imagination is kind of awesome. So
Right.
let's let them use it more.
Right. You don't suddenly you're realizing, oh, you don't have to give the player like 90 to 120 pages worth of lore. They can bring most of that stuff themselves.
Exactly.
You
And
don't.
we're finding more and more that, there's definitely a market for that. I mean, myself, I'm a fan of both. I
Yeah.
love the crunch. In fact, in a couple hours, I'll be meeting with my D&D group. We run a 3E campaign right now.
Yes, so that is. No, wait, I was saying I have books, but I think they're 3.5.
3.5 is definitely a favorite of mine, but our GM prefers 3E, so
Yeah.
we run with it.
No, we
But
we have gotten very lazy, and we're like to the point where we would no one. I think with my group, nobody wants to be the rules lawyer. Like nobody's interested in that role. So the differentiations of the minutia between systems has kind of faded away.
makes sense. And it's all about, as long as the table's having fun,
Yeah.
you know? Like the campaign we're having now with our GM, he can acknowledge there are good things in 3.5. And as long as we talk with him about it first, 9 times out of 10, he'll approve things from 3.5, so long as it doesn't contradict, a rule that he deems important in 3E.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another thing that, I've noticed in the game industry. I mean, ever since the very first D&D book, ever since Gygax, it's always been, look, these aren't strict, stay with the straight and narrow. These are just here to help you have fun. If you come up with your own ideas, if you need to bash it with a hammer, if you need to, hack it up a bit, go for it. It's just about having fun. And I love that the TTRPG community, especially the independent developers, have just taken that and ran with it.
Yeah,
You know,
no, I have an upcoming one which really stretches the notion of what is a game. It may have
oh,
been
nice.
it may have been submitted even to a not a game jam, but I liked its spirit and its presentation an awful lot.
I came up with Pass the Game, which actually one of my friends in my D&D group came up with, and I refined a little bit. And a friend of mine who's also a creator, I don't know if he actually did it or not, but he said he was going to submit it for not a game. It's just like things, because it's just a business card, and it's like you try to pass it to someone who's never played it before. And if you manage to do it, you win the game. But if you don't, you lost the game. And it's just kind of, it has my contact information on the card. So
Yeah,
let's be real, it's just to get my name out there. But it's fun, especially once things die down a bit more and we can actually gather in groups a bit more often.
yeah, and then it shows, hey, did I retain? Does this person remember me?
Exactly. It's a bit of a memory game. And then as it spreads more and more, if you have, enough observation skills, you can see it being passed in the room. So you can try to see who's had it and who hasn't.
Yeah, there's a mixture of like the idea of almost like parlor games sneaking into tabletop role playing games as people get more abstract with like play mechanics.
Yep.
Like once you start using like Jenga towers, you're kind of
Yeah,
like, at what point are you like deviating and further from like halfway between tabletop and LARP and parlor and all sorts of this abstract, I don't know, live play space. What would you? I don't know. I don't know if there's a word for all these things put together.
well, it's funny because I actually tweeted at one point as I was working on Tea Harvest, which is my latest game.
Yeah,
When does a tabletop RPG stop being an RPG and start being a board game?
yeah,
Because one of my playtesters and friends, shout out to Warped Board Games, so enjoyed playing it that they felt compelled to make a game board for it and just went all out. And I included the files when I uploaded the game because they did such an awesome job on it. And it's like, okay, so is this a TTRPG? Is this a board game? You know,
right. And like, how many skill cards do you add to D&D before that is becomes a board game?
right?
Uh,
It's
uh,
just it's been getting more blurred more and more, and even in the big name industries, you've got Gloomhaven. You know,
yeah,
I mean, I've heard it described as a TTRPG that happens to be, a bit more on the board, and then I've heard it described as a board game that has some role play in it. So it's like,
yeah.
where is that line?
Right. I don't know. I mean, is the line is the perfect balance the old like Hero Quest game?
Hmm.
That is
It's
that kind of like, or at least like an early version of that middle ground.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But
It's
speaking,
like, huh? Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say no. Finish your thought.
Well, it's like the very first game I made under the Lucky Newt name, One Cranky Dragon, is also going to be the inspiration of one of our future game jams, which is Get Up and Move. And the idea is it's a game that you don't stay at the table for. So for One Cranky Dragon, it's definitely directed more towards the young and the young at heart,
Yeah,
but it's all about, you jump, you avoid the dragon attacks, you have to dance for the forest dragon or forest guardians, and all these different things to get people to actually get up and move around and get the blood flowing. So it's like, is that still a TTRPG or is it more of a just movement game,
right. And if you're doing role playing, are you is that LARPing now?
Yep.
It's a weird line But speaking of all these myriad of tabletop RPGs, tell me a little bit about the T bundle, the game that was included, or the collection of games rather, that were included in Indiepocalypse 28.
So the Tea Bundle, I was actually raising funds for the artwork for Whistling Wolf Cafe. So that's the main game in there. It was originally a solo game. I also made a multiplayer version. Still making tweaks to the multiplayer version, but once the tweaks are done, it'll be uploaded to the same game page as the multiplayer version it's on now. So if you've already purchased Indieocalypse number 28, you'll still have access to that upload. But I was inspired by a song from an anime, actually. The Wolf Whistling song by Rocky Jack. And it's just a fun, sweet, whimsical song. And a lot of the components, it's a cafe simulator. And a lot of the components are actually named after little things in the song. Like, I have apple scones with marmalade moons as one of the things you can purchase. I have Wonder Way tea, Bluebird Sea tea blend. There's just a variety of things that are named from components of the song. It's a 15 to 20-minute game in the solo version, and it's just you're serving customers. There's 3 customers around or an hour, and then at the end of the hour, you can purchase some things to help you earn more tips. And you're rolling dice d6 against the cards that you draw that represent the customers.
Yeah.
And the suit of the card represents the customer's preference, while the number of the card represents what the customer needs. If they're lethargic, if they're hyper, if they, things like that. And the closer you get to the target number with your roll, the better you brew the tea and the happier they are with it, And depending on what they want versus what they need, there's different modifiers. The items that you can buy from the shop offer different bonuses. So there's like a bunch of different ways to strategize. I also threw into the bundle the Enchanted Tea. And it was inspired by a game by Beth Jackson of Beth and Angel Make Games called Everyday Enchanter. Beautiful game. Highly recommend checking it out. But this one is you get a hot drink if you're having a hard day, or if you need a little pick-me-up, or if you're, I don't know, going into a big project for work or something. And you can either randomly roll what the tea is and what it does for you, or you can pick and choose. And it's a bit of a thought exercise. The wording is specifically written to try to really immerse yourself in the idea that this hot drink in front of you is something truly special, something that will really help you out with whatever it is you need from it. And so I'm hoping that between the 3 games, the 2 versions of Whistling Wolf Cafe and Enchanted, wow, I just blinked, Enchanted Blend, that it will make people smile. It'll bring a bit of happiness. And because the cards for Whistling Wolf Cafe, it's all like a, not roll table, but you have to look up what the card symbolizes.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that by getting the custom art, I can make some custom cards that you can print out, leave it with playing cards, and it'll be that much easier because I'm going to be honest, I want to play this with my friends.
Right.
And I don't want them to have to constantly refer to a sheet of paper to see what each card means.
Yeah,
So,
there's a reason a lot of indie games use decks of cards and D6s, because it's the assumption that a lot of people just kind of have them lying around their house, rather they just bought them, or people just kind of slowly inherit board games and decks of cards.
yep.
And they all just use 6-sided dice. And and you've been talking, like you mentioned, 2 of them have like solo versions, and solo RPGs are definitely something that I think is very much within the realm of the like the indie tabletop developer. I don't know, are there any large, like Hasbro is not putting out solo RPGs, I don't think.
But it's interesting because it's like I'm in the Weird Draft Games Discord server, so I get to talk with the owner here and there. And from what I picked up, solo games, at least pre 2000 or 2020,
Yeah.
weren't really big on the market. People just, when it came to the big names, weren't really interested in them. So if you wanted even a solo board game, you either had to try to hunt down one that had that as an option, that was mainly a multiplayer but had a solo variation on it, or you had to go to the indie market. And I feel like it's one of the things that makes the um, independent tabletop RPG creators truly unique. I'm in two other servers that focus on solo games because of what happens has been happening with 2020, and
Yeah.
because of life in general. Sometimes it's just, especially for introverts or those who have different things that they're working through, it's just, you want something you can do on your own without having to interact with people some days. And it so many of the games are either a lot of fun, challenge you to step outside your comfort zone, or are really good mental health tools, I've noticed. Like, no one's here claiming to have a degree in psychology or psychiatry. I
Right.
mean, I know that there's a couple out there, which is pretty awesome, but we're doing the best we can to kind of help each other out through games. And it's really awesome. Like I did with Enchanted Blend. It's just, I don't even know if you can 100% call it a game.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
more a thought exercise, but it's something to do on your own, or to even, guide someone through if they're going through a hard time. It's like, I've had my hard times, and if someone like was reading this to me and just had me focusing on my daily, hot cup of tea,
Yeah.
and really trying to imbue it with that good energy, I think it would help. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping it helps others.
Yeah. It kind of gamify is a weird way to put it,
Yeah.
but it does it kind of like sometimes putting like a different structure around something helps you do
Mhm.
something, whether it's like gets you into a routine, like when maybe you wanted to have like tea every morning, but sometimes you forget and sometimes you're like, oh, I'll get to it later. But having like, even if it's like this 5-10 minute thing that you put aside that you enjoy with it, it helps you get into these routines and helps like create it, make it something more than just like that easily skippable activity, And then maybe you don't always play Enchanted Blend, but then your fallback is, well, I'm still gonna have the tea.
It's like there have been studies recently that have come out that have shown, if it is important to schedule in, if you need to, that small part of your day that's just for you.
Yeah,
It's actually shown to improve mental health. It's been shown to, make people more productive, make them a bit happier. Just slot in that time, no matter how you have to squeeze it in, because guess what? You matter, you know?
right. Yeah, and as someone in the chat pointed out, it's kind of like, there's countless, there's endless single player video games, but you can get that same feeling from board and tabletop games. So there's no reason that why. The only thing that's stopping you is, I guess, like yourself and the fact that you don't necessarily have as strong a. No, that's not true. You have, like, I am very much a person who says the game is just another player at the table. So solo games themselves aren't necessarily like solo games.
Exactly.
You're playing with the
There,
rules, or in a way, you're playing with the developer.
and it's a lot of fun because it's like I had the absolute honor of being a part of the Solo But Not Alone bundle, the second one.
Yeah,
And the games that I went through, I was doing like little single tweet blurbs to give people an idea of what they'd get if they bought the bundle. And some of the games are absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm talking about games that help with productivity, games that help with, fight against negative thoughts, games that are like absolute silliness, games that are, you don't feel like you're alone when you're playing a lot of these games, because the way it's worded, the way it's developed, it does feel like the creator's right there with you. So I even hesitate to call them solo games, more like just two player, except the second player is the game, like you said.
yeah, yeah. And for the person, I know, indie tabletop people bundled a lot. There's like always indie tabletop bundles going on. pretty much like
Yeah.
there's probably one going on right now, and they're all around different themes. Sometimes they're fundraising, sometimes they're just theme based, sometimes they're just like, hey, let's get some money. I know of one book. There's like I just looked it up, and I think I it's got a bad cover. I'll be honest. I don't like the cover. It's like a what's it called? The ultimate. It also has a bad title. I don't like the title either. Um, it's the ultimate micro RPG book, which is like a bunch of 40 micro. If you want them all in one collection, it's 40 micro RPGs, and I trust that like the book and the contents are good and cool. So don't let the very kind of generic. Folks, don't judge this book by its cover. Is what I'm saying. James D'Amato edited it, who is a long-standing kind of like I don't know offhand if he's done any tabletop design, but actual play with a large focus on like indie RPGs and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So it published like 40 weird indie games, and I bet if you look at the names, you'd be like, oh, I know all these indie tabletop designers, But
You get more to know more and more.
that would probably be a good book to look to if you're like, I want a book of like indie games. And look at this. It's ebooks and paperback books. It's got it all.
I gotta do a shout out for Tiny Tome.
Yes.
Yes, because my second game ever made, 5-second rule, based on a mechanic of my design, originally called 3D60, now called Diversified.
Yeah.
And it made it into the Tiny Tome, and they're all single-page RPGs, front and back at most. And a lot of them are just, I swear, they belong on shelves. They should be in like Barnes and Nobles,
Yeah, I knew there was two of them. And I was like, what is the other one? And I could not remember it. But that is the one.
And
it's got the little sword.
Yeah.
Huh? I was saying it's got the little sword. That's a paperclip.
Yep. And its predecessor is Tiny Library, which, if I remember right, is the size of business card or playing cards, one or the other.
Yeah, probably. There's what we're saying. There's a lot of these things out there, Yeah. It's just that's why I tend to skew away, even though I get like a decent amount of tabletop submissions. I tend to skew a little away from them because I feel like, as an outsider looking in, the tabletop RPG, the indie space, has got its act better together than the video game space. Where maybe not similarly not rolling around in money. We're not all millionaires, but it feels like a more cohesive indie space.
It's funny that you have that perspective because as a TTRPG creator, it feels like the video game designers, at least on itch.io, have it a lot easier selling their games.
Oh, I mean, that's
because of the visual.
That's probably true. That might be true. But I wonder in general about like what the itch sales numbers are.
Yeah, so do I. It's a curious beast.
Yeah. I think it's mostly because Bandcamp just tells you what they are. So I wonder the same. I wish itch had that kind of like transparency of it, because I wonder like how are my sales compared to just like general itch as a marketplace,
Yep.
And it's hard to tell.
Should I be pushing more? Should I let up more?
Right.
And something a lot of people don't think about is, at least on the TTRPG side, when you're not working as a team, I don't work with a team. The most I get is like I have help with playtesting. I do get another set of eyes on my work to make sure I don't make very simple, stupid grammar mistakes.
Yeah.
And other than the help that Warped Board gave me on the game board for Tea Harvest, I'm usually trying to figure it out on my own. So I have to be a writer, an editor. I have to be able to do the layout, the formatting. I have to be able to do the sales pitch. I have to be able to get it out there, the marketing, just all of these things. And it's things that I think a lot of people who haven't been on this side, Whether you're creating video games or tabletop RPGs, we have a lot we were expected to handle.
Yeah.
And a lot of people take that for granted, but it's definitely multiple jobs rolled into one.
Yeah, it's a lot going on, and yeah, 20 views a day for hot news from the chat for being on the top at one point in time that was like enough to get you in new and popular.
Yeah.
So it's like it's very weird in terms of like how itch works, and it's getting especially like weirder now that is like there's a lot of it's going down the humble bundle route in a lot of ways, where there's a lot of like just massive bundles, and that's what everyone is like. Itch, I'm worried that itch is becoming like the big bundle spot.
And I hate to say it, but at least because I've only been doing this for a year, but I have like, I think it's like 35 titles under my name now.
Yeah.
But that is, at least from what I've seen for my games, the bundles are where the money is.
Right.
That's where the bulk of my income has come from for creating TTRPGs.
Yeah, and
And
that's oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, that is like I mean I would be lying if I told you I didn't think anthologies are a good way to get people's attention.
Yeah.
I think it's a good model. I think they scale up way too high. I think
Yeah.
once people are making like less than $1 or something per sale, you're kind of like, it gets a little questionable. And then once you're making like practically nothing, you're like a penny on the sale. Then it's like,
Yeah. I was actually a part of a really large bundle recently we were talking about. I think it was like triple digit creators,
yeah,
and it was easily penny on the couple dollars.
yeah, yeah, and
It
it's
was like it was great that they managed to raise so much money. That it did make a good chunk of change, but ultimately because there were so many creators, we only saw so much of it, individually. It's a hard situation. And with the charities, understandably so, a lot of those bundles for different charities, you got triple digit games for barely any money, but then you've got the bundles where profits are split evenly for 25 or $30.
yeah.
And even when you've got like 80, 90, 100 games, that still seems high to people because they're used to seeing like 300, 400, 500 games for $10.
Yes. No, I've had people saying, "Hey, yeah, there's a lot of talk about just like general value of things, and I am a real indie kind of guy, so I'm like, my pricing for Indiepocalypse was based on like zine pricing. How much
Mm-hmm.
how much would you people pay for like a 20-page, 24-page zine or mini comic? And in my
Yeah.
experience at like my local indie comic show, it's like $15. It's like
Yeah.
generally for like a big 8.5, especially because it's an 8.5 uh,
Nice.
by 11, and then people would pay like $15, and that's like the market for that. So that's kind of what I based it on.
And it definitely feels like touch and feel because I take part in a lot of Sprinting Owls bundles.
Yeah.
But it's like there are some themes that sell faster than he can keep up with the goals, and then other themes that just hardly sell at all. And another part of his timing and trying to get that down. And it's like there's just so many variables that factor in. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. More. Yes, we are running into uh, more people from the chat talking about kind of what the problem I'm trying to solve in terms of indie games is that like people at indie comic shows are enthusiasts, and I don't know if there are like as many indie game enthusiasts, people who would like go to indie shows and like love to kind of like love the thrill of the exploration.
Yeah.
The like, oh,
Well,
I don't know what I'm getting, but I'm gonna get $100 worth of it.
I do know I live in the Pacific Northwest,
Yeah.
and we have OrcaCon out here every year.
Yes, I was
And
just speaking to someone briefly about for an upcoming showcase. I was talking to the founder of OrcaCon.
oh wow, okay, I want to tune into that one. But it's really cool because by keeping it small, it feels more personable.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for anyone else, but when I attended it, as someone looking at different games, I felt more compelled to explore things that I wouldn't at, say, the bigger conventions
Yeah.
that have all the big names and all the big brands.
Right, right. When you go, oh, I guess I'll get a Pathfinder book or something, but when there are no Pathfinder books, what do
It
you,
kind of compels you to explore more.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is like a far more niche market, obviously, but I think it's also a semi more not easily sustainable, but it is like more sustainable to just like be able to have like business card games and like small zine games that you printed out yourself. And
Yeah.
but the indie game space is, like you said, besides there are a couple small ones, but like for tabletop games, even tabletop games, I think it's mostly still like big
Okay.
shows.
Yeah. It's
It's
like, well, I will give this much with because we live within driving distance of PAX West.
yeah.
So usually that's the one convention we'll go to since we don't have to get a hotel or a flight or anything. And I've noticed the indie space for video games has been, or at least we haven't really been since, pre 2020,
Yeah.
but we noticed that it had been progressively getting larger and larger and larger as, more and more indie developers were renting space.
Well, I'll tell you some of those indie developers. A lot of their budgets are getting larger and larger and larger.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
So, so when you're talking about an indie game budget of like multi millions, I'm side eyeing that and going,
Yeah,
is that really indie, or is that just like
that's a good point.
you're
That's a very good point. When
yeah.
do you cross the line from indie to big company?
Right, right. At one point, are you an indie musician if your parents have Wikipedia pages?
Yeah.
Um, that eternal question.
Yep. And it seems like as the market grows and there are more opportunities rising up. I mean, it seems like the whole theme of this entire conversation has where's the line, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, yeah. It's right. It's like, is White Wolf indie or whatever? Because they're not
I
owned by
wouldn't call it
Hasbro.
indie, but that's me.
Because they're not owned by Hasbro.
Yeah.
In the same way as like another multi-million-dollar indie game maker indie because EA doesn't own them.
Yeah.
So it's like, where do you? And I know where those developers will draw the line. They will draw it wherever it's convenient to label themselves indie or not. And right now, it's probably very convenient to label yourself indie, even if you have like a publisher and a massive budget
Yeah.
and more money to make your game than I'll ever see in my lifetime.
Right. It's like I don't make a livable income, as an
Right.
indie developer. I don't have a whole team I can hire. The help that I've gotten has been purely voluntary, and I absolutely love those friends for it because they are amazing to
Right.
spend their precious time on helping me. But this is definitely indie developer territory.
Yeah, I saw a thread recently about how kind of you need to somewhat acknowledge that like the DIY punk spaces are also kind of funded on the back of the rich kids who want to be part of them. And they that's how maybe you get community center spaces to play your dirty punk shows and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and someone's dad owns a thing that they'll lend you out their hall for a weekend so you can play their show because they want to muck it up with the common people and they want to
Yeah.
And sometimes honestly, sincerely, not it's not always pulp style, you
Yeah.
know, poverty tourism. I think sometimes people are like, I didn't ask to be born into a multi-million-dollar family, and I'm trying to get rid of it, and who knows, but that's a whole other giant conversation that we're not
Oh
going to
yeah.
get into at the moment.
Absolutely.
Right, but
Oh man.
we're here theoretically talking about games, I think. Or actually, I think we're gonna have like a this is folks. This is a shorter show than usual because there's only one guest here today,
Hi.
and we're not gonna. I'm not gonna, Laura. I'm not gonna capitalize all of your day talking because I could honestly just like ramble forever, and I will go on forever.
You're very easy to talk with.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual. Sometimes, and I do not begrudge people, but sometimes it is harder. Like so I think some people know how shy they can be, and some people have more confidence. And I applaud them for giving it the try. But sometimes it's like I was too nervous. I was far too nervous, and
To
I
admit, my first interview, I had so many butterflies in my stomach. Oh my gosh. I had made a pot of tea ahead of time
yeah.
and I downed the entire pot like within the first 20 minutes. I was so nervous.
No, listen. If you told high school me that I would just be just doing this sort of thing nonstop, that I would be this kind of gregarious, out there kind of person, I would not have believed you for a second. But I just started doing it, and then it kind of, I don't know, I never stopped doing it.
It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I like the space. I like being able to, like, hang out with people because I can't travel to the Pacific Northwest, unlikely. But it's a way to have those kind of like post conversation hangouts. That's what this show is. It's the post con hangout of that. Oh, maybe that's my lead in, my
There you go.
intro.
Yeah.
It's
Because it kind of feels, I was actually going to say before you said that, it feels like I'm just at a pub with you. There's, a pitcher of beer between us,
yeah.
just hanging out.
That's what I want, because I'm not. Listen, interviewing is a skill, and I don't think I'm bad at it. But I also don't. I'm not like an interviewer.
Yeah.
I'm more a mostly because it requires a lot of. I think it requires more research than I'm going to do in advance to be a good interviewer. To prepare a series of questions. Well, I'm usually asking one question and then sort of following the thread to where it goes, which is one stylistic approach, I guess. Oh, I forgot.
There's the old tip of people enjoy talking about themselves. So
Yes,
just use questions that get them talking about themselves and you'll be fine.
exactly. Yes, ask people questions about themselves, and they'll go forever. But speaking of, I forgot to ask you the most important question of this entire show, which is, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
So I was actually at the jam page, and you know how twitchy the itch.io jam page can be, trying to find specifically something that would fit the TTRPG slot.
Yeah. Oh,
And
there's
I saw,
there's like 8 billion jams now.
yeah, and then I saw, and there's no way to filter them really,
Right.
not effectively.
Yeah.
But I saw the indie part of Indiepocalypse and caught my eye, decide, screw it, I'm going to see what it is. And I saw that you would consider tabletop RPG games too. And it's like, cool, you know what? It's not going to hurt. Probably not going to make it, but can't hurt to try. Worst that'll happen is it won't be picked.
Yeah.
And that was I want to say I initially tried for number 26 or 27. Didn't get picked. Tried again for number 28 and got picked.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
woohoo.
That's the system. Just keep trying, because sometimes I will never tell you to your face that you'll never get included. So maybe if you submit like 3 or 4 times and you never get my waitlist email that I send out sometimes if I'm feeling like it. If you do that, you never get that email. Maybe just stop, because maybe
Yeah.
and it may not even be that other people might love the game, but I just like, it just does not work with me. It does.
Well, one
I go, not interested.
one trick that helped for me was I didn't get the waiting list email the first time,
And it's
but I
possible.
did try different games the
Yeah,
second time I entered.
right.
Just
And it's entirely possible that month I didn't send it because
But I have to admit, I did kind of spread the word. Hey,
yeah,
he actually accepts TTRPGs that, appeal to him. So give it a
yeah,
shot. This is kind of
yeah.
awesome.
No, that's I encourage people to spread the word. Yeah, I usually cap out at two
Hmm.
TTRPGs per thing because you've all got your bundles. Like I said, you feel like you got your act together better than video game folks do.
Right.
Um,
We're
you,
just faking it until we make it, right?
yeah, and you're doing a great job of faking, helping each other out, and forming communities, and like doing like the anthology style work without me needing to help you out there.
Say, most of us are role players. We've got to be good at
Yes,
it.
yeah. Like even like the community copy approach is like a very different thing than like you very rarely see community copies for games.
Oh, it's great. I absolutely love it because it's like money's been super tight for us this year. We had a death in the family
Yeah.
on the East Coast, and we had to do like 3 flights to the East Coast within a year, which really tried our budget.
Yes, that
But
is a lot.
it's and I know I am far from the only person struggling this year. So being able to give back when I see other developers with the community copies and actually willing to take their hard-earned, time and all this effort that they put into the game and be like, "Hey, I know this, things can suck sometimes. Here you go. Here's something to cheer you up."
Yeah, and I
It's
think
like it feels like the least you can do is pay it forward, you
right,
know?
and it helps like encourage the space. I think
Oh,
where
absolutely.
it's like especially like it's hard to give a trailer for a tabletop game.
Yeah,
It's
and what I've
hard.
noticed some developers do that I actually take them up on is they'll provide the printer friendly or the plain version of their tabletop game
Yeah,
for free, and then you can get the fancier one that's like all spiffy and in color and all these nifty things for extra. You pay a little bit for it. And it's great because people can still have access to the base game if they're not doing so well or can't afford to pay for much.
right.
And if you can afford to pay for more, it's there.
Yeah, it's
And it just seems like an awesome setup.
right. Like you go, oh yeah, I got like this sort of like shorter, maybe even like a quick start version that doesn't have all the dent. Like maybe it doesn't have more systems, maybe it doesn't have every class, but it like gives you a sense of like what the game is.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, and it also gives you a sense of like, hey, because I think the going from like your D&D into just like even like yeah, what's his name? Uh, the guy Grant, is it Grant Howitt? Is that the
Yes.
name I'm looking for? Who's and people I think like Critical Role people like big fancy popular
Yeah.
tabletop role players have played some of his
Matt
games.
Mercer and yep.
Have they've played a game or two of his and like
I
even those are
don't
like
know
a
if Matt Mercer has.
I listen. I am so far from the world of actual play role playing. I
Yeah.
I tried the one everybody really liked, and then I hated it like immensely.
Oh, these days there's a few people
Yeah.
really liked,
Oh.
like Lasers and Feelings. You've got Honey Heist.
Oh no
You've
no! I was
got.
talking about the actual play podcasts.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm a big fan of playing tabletop role playing like weird indie games. That's like exclusively what my group plays. I love them. I love just like really abstract kind of like just like absurd systems or weird play styles or just someone spent a lot of time thinking about this particular setting kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
big
No, it
big fan.
it does it does feel like more of the podcasters who usually just cover the big names are starting to see, oh wait, there is a market for these funky, silly, weird, you know, groovy games.
Yeah,
So there might be an actual audience here of other
Right.
people who might be curious but don't know where to start.
Yeah, yeah, and like I mean, I mentioned One Shot earlier. There have been people who have been in the grind like forever, doing that
Hmm.
kind of stuff.
No,
But
it's pretty cool. And it's like I said, I started out with Super Crunch, with
yeah,
D&D, with well, what I consider Super Crunch White Wolf, because you have to read, several pages, small books. But I tried playing, with John Wick, no, not that John Wick,
yeah,
his Big Book Little Games. And it just didn't work well with my group, and I had been turned off of smaller games. It's like I need the crunch, I need the system. And I started in getting into the TTRPG space by going into board games first, because PAX West had a group of indie developers for board games that I chatted with, and I started trying to create my own board games, and it kind of sucked.
yeah,
And I actually came across the one page TTRPG jam um, through the Weird Giraffe Games Discord server. And it was like, you know what? It's supposed to be only one page. I can do one page. I can make this happen.
yeah,
And throughout the month, I actually worked out 3 games. I took months off thinking that would be the end of it. I'm never going to touch this again. And then the same person who ran the jam also did a hackathon where you could hack the system of any of the entries as long as it was covered by the right license or you had permission from that year or the year before. And the ideas have been flowing since. Since I think it was in December was when I thought it might finally stop, and I kept creating. But I went from being super crunch, I can't do the fast and loose, I can't do the smaller systems, to just fully immersing myself in it.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that is like, and as someone from the chat says, that's actually also the kind of actual plays that I like the idea of, which is why I'm confused that so many of them use D&D, because I enjoy
Yeah.
them. Like, I'm not like, yes, D&D, the only one that I like and regularly listen to is by friend of the zine, who did like cover of issue 8, I believe. The game master of that is Neo Scum. But that's I don't listen to that because I'm like, yeah, dude, I love Shadowrun.
Yeah.
I listen to it because I'm like, oh, I like this improvised, this like well produced improv show. It's like they're like, yes, Neoscum is good. Neoscum good indeed.
Do you want
Yeah.
to do a shout out to Critfail, Kritfayle?
Okay. Yes.
They have a podcast for rules light games.
Yeah.
They do the bigger ones like Seventh Sea, but they also do the smaller games, which I think is awesome. And they do it like an actual old style radio play.
Yeah. I think it's this really weird in between space that's grown up. Um, Probably because of a very heavily edited tabletop role playing game that I don't particularly, or actual play that I don't particularly care for very much.
Okay.
Um, but their editing probably encourages kind of like edited style, which I really like. And I think it's cool that like there are so many people who are like taking this approach to like, yeah, they're like radio shows.
Yeah. I
The
mean, in essence, even the unedited ones feel like a radio show when you're
Yeah.
listening to them, especially when they're covering the smaller games, because it's like, I don't know, there's something about the smaller games that seems to give players more of an unspoken permission to go wild with it.
Yes, because you don't have to worry about stakes or whether your character lives or dies or that kind of thing.
Yep,
You don't have to worry about winning the game.
exactly.
And I
It
love
kind of
to lose the game.
Oh God, what was that one game? Which is like the ultimate way to break players out of being scared of dying. Paranoia, I think it
Okay.
is. And
I
it's all about, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just, you will go through characters like they're nothing.
No, I think what we were playing. We were playing Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which is I think is like this,
Sounds interesting.
which is like an OSR style, one of those ones. And I had a character die like right at the beginning of a session, like, and I think I also died later during that session.
Nah.
I had gone through like 6 to 8 clerics by the time we were done, just like nonstop, just dying,
It does.
it's fun.
It feels like that there's two different types of players.
Yeah.
There's ones who will do anything to keep their character alive, and then there's the one who's like, "Oh, is it about time for me to roll another sheet up?"
Yes. Yeah.
Like
I
even in this campaign, even in this 3 D&D campaign, where most people are very, "Oh my god, don't die, don't die, don't die." There have been so many times where it's like, "Oh, I'm going to should I start rolling up another character?" And the other players at my table are like, "No, we'll find a way to save you." It's like, okay, but
that's
this would be a really cool dramatic twist in the story.
right. Yeah. No, that's what I love about. I had just played Troika for the first time fairly
Oh,
recently,
wow.
and it's basically built for that. Like, there's a good online character generator that every time he's like, "Oh man, I want to generate another character."
Nice.
And then it's built to the idea of like you're constantly entering these new wild worlds after every session, more or less. So it makes sense
Cool.
to like reboot your characters.
Yep,
And
that's cool.
I love weird systems. I love making up and playing weird characters.
They can
It's
be a blast.
yeah. It
It's like one of my favorite D&D characters I ever played was so flawed. She was a fighter who had a lot of immense strength. I mean, some people would argue that she was min-max, but
right.
um, I did the random rolls and I intentionally gave her a low int, which was going to suck for any skill check at all.
Yeah.
But I did that intentionally because up to that point I'd played nothing but well-balanced characters, and I found myself bored with that.
Right.
And by giving her this immense flaw where she was incredibly strong, incredibly sweet and bubbly, but dumb as a brick.
Yeah, I I very similarly let the random stat line determine how I play my characters.
Nice. Oh,
Because,
those are fun.
which often like I realize I skewed towards playing younger characters because you always start at level 1. So I'm like, oh, it makes sense that I'm young and inexperienced because I'm level 1. And then,
Yep.
but
And hmm?
no, continue.
You see so many complaints about, level 1 through 3 or level 1 through 4 is useless in D&D. But if you go at it just like that with the idea, no, this character is brand new to adventuring, it makes sense they can't hit worth anything,
Right. I I'm a big fan of sort of like the comedy of errors of role playing game.
Yes.
The dice are meant to be respected and feared as an agent of chaos at the table.
Yeah. Because let's be real, it doesn't matter how skilled you are at a thing, you're always going to have those moments where you're going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, yeah, and listen, also they're not real. They're-
Yeah.
it's all make believe. I know those chick tracks have warned you, but
Oh, God.
we're not all Debbies, you know.
Don't even get me started on that.
Um, but anyway, speaking of not getting started, I tried to end the show 20 minutes ago, and then I just kept going. Um, but you know what? I think that's how these like. I think I told you beforehand that like we'll just do 20. But then I think solo shows tend to go for like a good half hour, honest, or a good hour, because it's just kind of like where's you just start talking and it
Yeah,
just
topic
flows.
leads to topic, leads to topic, leads to topic,
Yeah, it's people are easy to talk to, and I love to talk to people. But
Def- Definitely a great quality for a host for a show like this.
thank you. I've been listening for a while. I like was avoiding talk shows, or like I wasn't listening to hosted style shows.
Hmm.
Then I've been getting more into listening to a at least one hosted style show, and like picking up the tricks of the trade, and also they have most of my kind of like tendencies anyway, which is a weird kind of thing. So it's also a sense of don't become too much that one person, you know?
Oh boy, yep.
Um, but yeah, I love just talking. I love bouncing off of people. I love just hanging out. But speaking of hanging out, we're done hanging out. But if people want to hang out and play your games, where would they get those games, Laura? Look at that! What a
Look up,
chance!
it's very simple. Lucky Newt Games on itch.io has all my titles.
Oh, perfect.
Most of them have community copies. If you want to see a community copy and you happen to own any of my games already, be sure to rate or comment. Or even if you don't own a game, you can comment with, "Oh, I'm really excited to play this." And every comment and rating and every dollar, put into a game, I'll add another community copy.
I salute.
Doesn't matter if you do one, two, or all three. You
Yeah,
can also find me on Twitter, again, at Lucky Newt Games. Try to keep consistent.
yeah. That's hey, that's what I do. I keep consistent across everything, generally
Woohoo!
speaking, in terms of like
We're
usernames.
Yeah, where we're able.
Yeah, yeah. Technically speaking, this thing is called Indiepocalypse, but it's at pizzapranks.itch.io, which
Nice.
is, I guess, my brand, and that's what I use for everything. But yeah, no, and you know what? Salute you for keeping up on community copies. I started doing like 5 community copies to each past issue, and a new issue came out, and I'm like, once I got to like issue 20, I'm like, this is way too much work. There's no button that says add community copies to every issue, so I just gave up. I stopped doing it because it's too much time. So, salute to keeping up the work.
Thank you very much.
It's
Also, a couple things to look forward
yes,
to. The video game hacks TTRPG that we ran has ended. We're going through the rating period. It's pretty awesome. There are some incredible entries. And once the rating period is done, we're going to put it all into a bundle. And it's all tabletop games that hack a video game in some way, shape, or form. So,
okay,
like the ones that I put in was Whistling Wolf Cafe from the Tea Bundle, but also Tea Harvest, which is a farming sim. I've seen ones that hack fighting games, dancing games, dungeon crawlers. It's crazy how creative people have gotten with it. We're
yeah,
also still trying to put together the Light in the Darkness jam. We already did the jam. We're trying to get the bundle together. Unfortunately, a couple of people weren't able to approve the bundle, so we're gonna try that again. We're not giving up on it. So,
yes. That's always
but
a tricky part of putting together bundles.
sorry, that was mini Newt.
No, no, whatever it was, it didn't come through to me.
Okay.
Well, perfect, Laura. Glad to have you on the show. Maybe we'll have you on another. Part of these shows. I like to put people in the room together. You know,
Yep.
but maybe we'll have you. I'll have you. I will have you. I say as if it is not just me here as the solo host,
Well, I
producer,
mean, if
and
we're talking
editor.
like that, you'll have to speak with my husband.
Oh yes. Uh, have you back on the show with other guests.
That'd be
But
awesome.
but for now, yeah, because I've had tabletop developers from like the Philippines, and
Oh, cool.
I don't make any presumptions about your traveling habits, but I presume you don't find yourself every other weekend over in the Philippines.
No, I don't.
So this is a nice way to connect like developers all around the world who otherwise probably would not meet.
Absolutely.
But for me, for my stuff, where you would let's indiepocalypse.com. It's where you buy the thing. You can also buy it all over the place. If you want to submit your stuff, it's indiepocalypse.com/submit. All one word, not that way of saying it was not implying an alternate way of spelling it. If you want to get it every week, just delivered straight to you without having to think about it, both in terms of going to the page. If that's all too much work for you, entering your payment info every month, going to the page, you can go to indiepockets.com/Patreon. Just get it all delivered to you once a week. Get a nice link. If you on the it's basically a subscription, so it's like $15 a month for an issue, which is how much they cost. But if you only want to do $5 a month, you'll get just the newly commissioned games. If you want to do a more traditional kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, like different indie game Patreons, like there are that are like monthly games. I met that. I have changed the model to meet that model, and then you'll also get like a $5 off coupon. I think is how I do it. If you want to just then buy the issue after, like buy the full issue. That's how the stuff works. What is the thing? I have a URL going on for the pledge drive where you can get 8 copies. Oh, it's /pledge. I'm so smart about these things. Indiepocalypse.com/pledge. If you're listening to this within the month of July, you can get 8 commissioned games for a minimum of $1, and each entry, when you buy it, you get a chance to win a lifetime subscription to Indiepocalypse, which is quite the bargain, especially because they'll be going for a long time. I am 30 months in, and I'm looking forward to the next 30. That's it. That's everything. I don't have anything else to say. I don't think. I think I hit all my plugs. That's my stuff. Laura, thank you so much for being here once more.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, I will figure something out. I'm kind of excited that I'm approaching the end of. I have a big Excel sheet of all the people who I've asked to be on the show, and I color them in with green for yes, red for no, and I'm running out of uncolored spaces. And then I can repeat.
Great.
Well, I've been repeating, but I mean, anyway, goodbye.